Hi, this is Pete Fernbaugh. Welcome to Trinity Talk. My guest today is Dr. Justin Baker, sports chiropractor here at Trinity Health System. Dr. Baker, welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for being here today. The big question I have for you up front, we're going to talk a little bit about what goes on during the sports season, how athletes can protect themselves, what they tend to forget. But up front, let's talk about self-manipulation and some of the precautions. First of all, for us lay people, define what you mean by self-manipulation.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people like to crack themselves, so to speak. Give some pop and give some short-term relief, but the inherent dangers of that sometimes when you do that too frequently is essentially you're stretching the ligaments beyond what they're capable of doing. So almost like an ankle sprain, that's what I compare it to, right? If you want sprain your ankle and then continue to sprain that ankle repeatedly and expect it to heal or feel good. Mm-hmm. The same thing goes for your lumbar spine or your neck if you're cracking it all the time like that. I see the majority of the young population that might be what we call hypermobile, which means their ligaments are too stretched, and there's a screen we use for that. Those typical people will go to the end range extreme to kind of really induce that pop or that quick feel-good sensation, but it's actually not great for them long term.
Right. So you mentioned stretching, and that's what stood out to me because we're told to stretch every day. What's the difference between non-athlete stretching and athlete stretching, and how does that lead to some of the problems you're describing?
Yeah, sure. So just generalized stretching, the research shows that it's good to support lactic acid mobilization. So after a workout or something for an athlete maybe, or for somebody that's on a walk, stretching is not the worst thing. But from an athletic perspective, if you try and stretch before competition, it's not dynamic. It actually takes away some of the mechanical advantages an athlete might have. Yeah. So it's really important to do a dynamic warm-up where you're actually making sure your joints are going through their full range of motion. And a lot of times we do a movement prep or movement preparation for the athletes, or even adults that might be actively walking or whatnot, to try and kind of warm up the body, right? So some planks or some other exercises that might get their hips kind of exercise. So
the difference can be found in how much of the body you're engaging during stretching. And what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, is that some folks tend to focus on one part of their body more than the other when you really should be focusing on warming up your body.
Totally. Yeah, you're right. So you want to get the whole spine, hips, shoulders, elbows, from wrists, all of it, right? Get it all kind of prepared to accept whatever demand you're going to put on it.
Now you mentioned that it can lead to what can be akin to a sprained ankle or spraining other parts of your body. What are some of the common things you see in your office, some of the common problems that result from overly manipulating yourself?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of times it's just that when you stretch a ligament beyond its capacity too many times, your body has no choice but to kind of find an alternative way to stabilize a joint. And so what you typically see is, mechanically, your muscles will kind of tighten up or spasm, or what it feels like a muscle spasm. But when you're manipulating yourself all the time, that spasm is actually protective. Mm-hmm. So the point of that is that as you get away from that and you start to strengthen the things around that might be kind of weakened, that typically can resolve itself.
So one of the things we hear in kind of pop medicine, if you will, is listen to your body. Is that a good principle when stretching? Like your body's going to tell you if you're going too far?
Right, yeah. No, I totally agree with that. What I always tell patients is, respect your range of motion. A lot of times people have underlying maybe subtle biomechanical changes in like a hip joint or a shoulder joint or their elbow during development. And, they might see their friend or their teammate that tries to really stretch it and can get to a certain range, but they can't. There's a reason, right? Your bone is running into a bone, so you have to kind of respect that and don't think you need to blow past that. The same thing goes for soft tissue, right? If your body, there's a certain benefit to doing that after an exercise, but you don't need to plow through that and try to really overdo it. Respect your body.
I think sometimes athletes and folks who work out a lot, that's something they think is a sign of resilience or strength, is to blow past what your body's telling you. Is that something you see a lot of in your office, people who just did not listen to their body?
Quite often, yes.
Right.
Right. Once they can kind of reel that back and just be educated on, okay, here is your proper range of motion. This is what you're capable of doing. This is what you should do. The education's crucial in that.
So let's get into what goes on during the sports season. It's an intense time. They're focused on the next game, the next two games, what happened in the last game.
Sure.
It's a constant engagement, but they can sometimes forget about core strength.
Sure.
Right? So first of all, tell us what you mean by core strength, and then how athletes can maintain that during the season.
Right, so core strength, just like a blanket term, means you need to start strengthening the abdominal region, right? But there's lots of, it's not just, doing sit-ups, it's doing dynamic motion that might actually strengthen, the other parts connected to your abdomen, right? So that everything is built off of your ability to stabilize your core, your trunk. So once you can kind of get that, adequately maintained, it's really important that through the season, as you're exercising or doing your sport, that you really work on kind of keeping that, because if you don't, then you'll start to kind of hang out on other structures that are maybe not biomechanically capable of that. I mean, by saying like, okay, if your core is, let's say, off or, weakened to some extent, you might depend more on a group of muscles like your quadriceps to control your versus, well, if that was how it was supposed to be, your core would be taking a lot more of that load. So it kind of sets you up for injury whenever you don't have that.
That's interesting. So when you're talking about core strength, some of the exercises, the one that springs to mind is planking. Is that a great?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
fantastic. Side planks, forward planks, all the variations, dynamic motions. That you don't just want to have static holds, right? You need to be able to go through a range of motion and be able to control your body essentially and function in that.
Is yoga a good workout program for athletes to do during the season?
Yeah, great question. I love it. I tell the majority of my patients to kind of work on that. Again, respecting your range of motion, but you're also doing some dynamic stability work, and it's pretty straightforward. There's good yoga and bad yoga,
right? Yes, right.
So you got to respect, the quality instructors and stuff. But I always encourage people to do that.
You mentioned good yoga, bad yoga. I mean, that's also a way that yoga is a great way to learn how to listen to your body.
Absolutely.
Because you have to slow down. You don't just have to get that next rep in.
Yep.
So you have to slow down, and you really learn a lot about your body. At least I have when I do yoga.
Sure.
Could you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. So I think that probably the most overlooked principle in yoga isn't just the what it's good for your body, but it's good for your mind, right? But also the respiration during that. So breathing is often overlooked, and believe it or not, there's a right way to do that, right?
Right.
So intra-abdominal pressure and diaphragmatic breathing is really crucial, and yoga goes into those principles very well. Your diaphragm is actually a stability muscle, right? So when you breathe in, you're actually creating core strength. And so yoga really helps kind of, among other, modalities of exercise, really helps to target that.
So everything we've been discussing so far is very helpful, not just to athletes, but non-athletes too. It's great to understand our bodies. Getting back to athletes though, during the season, once again, we mentioned how intense it can be. What about recovery? What do athletes tend to neglect when it comes to recovery? And how would you define recovery?
Yeah, sure. So I think backing up for a sec, for the past 10 years, there's been an explosion of how important recovery is. We look back and let's just give Michael Jordan an example. He'd play every game all season, every minute, right?
Yeah.
But nowadays it's more emphasized on, hey, we need to focus on recovery, and there's biometrics and lab testing and all sorts of extra analysis that we can do to see, is this athlete recovered? Take that down a level to like high school level or something that maybe they don't have, getting their lab drawn every day, or they're doing a urinalysis or some other similar biometric. Really, it comes down to listening to your body, right? So I think coaches are more aware of that now. You're going to get a better performing athlete if they have the adequate amount of rest, hydration, minerals and micronutrient supplementation, diet, right? So if you're going to go eat a pound of nerds before your game, probably not the best thing you need to do, right?
Yes.
Lean meats, vegetables, some healthy starches to kind of get your carbohydrate intake up. That's kind of the gist of recovery in season.
Right, and leave the nerds till after the game.
Yeah, once in a while, it's all right, but all the time.
Once in a while.
Yeah.
I think that's so important to emphasize, because it's easy for everyone to forget that sleeping is recovery.
Sure.
And so how many hours a night should an athlete get?
Yeah, so evidence suggests anywhere between 6 and 10. It depends on age level, the physical demands that you're in. That's another thing that a lot of times your body will figure out itself, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to bed at 1 o'clock and you're waking up at 6 for school, it's probably not a good idea, probably not enough. You don't get into those deep REM sleeps that you need to kind of truly recover. So yeah, you need to, I'd say that the target's, 7-8 hours, but everybody's a little different.
Right. Now, during REM, what kind of recovery goes on during REM sleep?
Oh, everything. I mean, it's how we recharge our body, right? So you're going to get increased hormones. You're going to produce those overnight, the recovery portion of that, right? Especially, I'm thinking in an adolescent, male or female that might be in the season and that sort of thing. It also happens later in life as well, but any sort of hormone replacement, your insulin's going to regulate some. You're going to be able to digest foods better. Literally everything in your body resets.
So you've got an athlete super fast metabolism, and they just heard you say a second ago, don't eat that pound of nerds.
Yeah, sure.
But they like the candy. They like that rush that the sugar gives them. What is the rush they're going to get from eating lean meats, from eating vegetables, the nutritious food, as opposed to the instant gratification food?
Yeah, so if you're eating a bunch of high glycemic index foods or very sugary foods, you're going to get a spike in your glucose level about in a half an hour or so, and then it's going to start to dip off. So you might be good if your competition's a sprint,
Right.
scientifically speaking, but if it's anything longer where you have to use more aerobic capacity, muscles and that part of it, that system of your body, you're going to need something like lean meats and starches and vegetables that are longer lasting. You're not going to get a rush from that. It's more the understanding that you're going to have better long-term production because of that.
Sustainability to get you through that 3-4 hour game.
Right.
So maybe an athlete who feels like they start to crash midway through the game, maybe it has to do with their pregame ritual.
Very well could be. Yeah. And that'd be the first thing I'd target. What's your hydration level? What's your sleep level? How much protein are you getting in a day?
What's the general message you'd like to communicate to our viewers and our listeners about especially the athletes, about taking care of their bodies when they're involved in intense play, and just kind of wrap it all up, what we've talked about?
Yeah, sure. So you touched on it actually, is listening to your body is super important. I think that there are guidelines, there's experts in the community that can really help you kind of get there. Going plenty of water, hydration, plenty of lean proteins, the right amount of mobility work at home, not overdoing it. Those are all kind of the key topics that we talked about.
Excellent. Dr. Baker, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, sure.
Lots of great information in a short period of time.
Sure,
so
man.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Appreciate it.
Very appreciated.
Yeah.
And we hope you'll join us next time on Trinity Talk. Thank you for watching.